There it is.
There we go.
Yes. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maxwell Rani. I'm a Cape Townian. I was born here in Cape Town in South Africa. I think for me, it is very important to mention the fact that I grew up around the world. I think so. I grew up in the States. I grew up in London. I grew up in France. I've traveled quite a lot. And within my profession, when I'm free on holidays, I always had the luxury to go and teach in North Carolina A&T State University in the South, in the States, and Wisconsin Madison, Temple University in Philadelphia. And I did go to Brazil. I did go. It's at endless. So what I'm trying to state is that what I'm about to mention, or what I'm about to share, what I'm about to talk about, is stems out from my travels. It stems out from my academic profile. It stems out from writing and reading quite a lot in regards to African dance. When I talk about African dance, I would like always to talk about the fact that African dance has many caps or have many pockets in it. So you might find other people talk about indigenous or indigeneity. Others talk about traditional dance, which are both interchangeable. Others are talking about African contemporary, which in my opinion is an African dance definition of the 21st century. And that's where I am. I'm here at the University of Cape Town, a course convener out of a third year and a fourth year course, mostly senior students. And my specialty as well is more on making bodies that can dance, that can move, meaning that my excitement or my objective in my course, the way it's nurtured, it's more creating people that are aiming at becoming professional performers. All right, so I'm more running the performativity section. So diving straight into it because of the time, I had a lot of conversation with different people about this subject or what I'm about to tell. From my colleagues, which I'm surrounded by colleagues that actually are around the world, like my best friend Lisa Wilson, who's from Jamaica, but who teaches in my department. When I talk about this issue of indigenous dance and its significance, and indigenous dance in relation to education, there is a vast things that one can talk about. But I always like to narrow everything that I talk about within to Africa or southern part of Africa itself, because I do feel that there is probably misconception or misunderstanding or a marginalization when it comes to our indigenous art forms. And I'm saying this, not I'm trying to be biased, because of I'm 51 years old, and on top of that, I've danced half of my life, and I've traveled Africa quite a lot. I read extensively, and mostly the readings that I'm reading about, mostly even from academia to tertiary and all, somehow there is this missing fundamental of indigenous dance or indigenous going to traditions, that it one it's not how can I put it, it's not explored to its level best that can suit the African people. Mostly people who talk about indigeneity or indigenous are people who are writing about it but using a Western lens. When I say Western lens, I'm talking about the Euro-American context. So when we talk about indigeneity or indigenous dances within a South African context, and why it is fundamental, particularly to be in school, it is because that indigenous dance, it is more than just a physical enticement. It is more than a physical enticement. Indigenous dance is molding the children. Indigenous dance, it reflects a social behavior of particular people. Indigenous dance, it educates the learner or the child about the body itself. Indigenous dance is the one that is actually creating a lot of muscle memory that feeds into the brain of the child. Indigenous dance educates and it combats stereotype and Eurocentricity. Indigenous dance is a feeder to the child's knowledge and information so that our children, as they grow, they understand about each other's differences. They understand and comprehend each other's differences in cultural expertise or the way people execute their own cultures, particularly with indigenous and traditional. Indigenous dance is the mother of all cultures, if I may say so, in dancing, because indigenous dance, as I've said, it is more interchangeable with traditional, but goes into African contemporary. It's a DNA of the 21st century when we talk about African dance. So such information is fundamental that it is more manifested into the children of today, particularly those who are learning dance. Educators, I think they need to understand the power that is invested in dance. As I've said, it's not about physical enticement only. It's a feeder to the brain. It creates actually the future leaders of the country. And on top of that, dance is a reflection of humanity. All right. Now, with that understanding, dancing as well, if I may tap into this issue of stimuli to the brain of a child. If you travel, you'll find that if you go to the Asian side, if I may be point, if you go to China particularly, in China, when I lived actually in China, I lived for 2 years, and I live in Beijing. In China, at the back of where I was staying, there was a high school. The fascination was the fact that every morning before they start to go to classes, they go to the school's field and they do an immense amount of kata. And while they're doing that and they're sweating and they're doing the kata, which is a physical metamorphosis, this physical thing, it enables them to feed in from the body to the mind because they're about to go out to the classes themselves. So that is just tapping into the power of physicality, the power of dance, the power of movement. In other cultures, you go to Germany and you go even to Asia again, and even here in southern part of Africa, other people choose to take their children to learn piano. There's a reason why the piano. The piano is a stimuli right up in here. It's not about music in most part. It's about the posture. It has a culture of its own. It's what it ingrains to a child's mind. So as dancing. In Africa, dancing enables the parents to understand the body of the child when it shapes. It creates a relationship between the parents or the father or the mother within the child and the community, the social community where the child is actually designated. You bringing all what I've just been said into a class. These are the armaments, these are the tools that probably would be expected out of a teacher. A teacher, I feel that a teacher needs to understand how the globe fits into our indigenous dance and how we fit in as a society in South Africa into our indigenous dance. I think the idea of just teaching a dance for dance sake and this teacher-centered way of teaching, it needs to be interrogated. There needs to be a conversation into about that. F. Daniels Mabingo in Uganda, in 2015, his publication of his thesis, he talks exactly about that. Why it is important that indigenous dance has to be within the schools. But however, when the teachers or educators teach about indigenous dance, they need to have an understanding of the fact that you need to find a particular pedagogy to teach indigenous dance. It is impossible to teach indigenous dance or our dances within a Euro-American PGCE or a mechanism or a pedagogy that is written outside of the continent. We need, or scholars or educators within the education system need to come up with a mechanism on how to teach, indigenous dance using CAPS that speaks to the indigenous dance, speaks to the people of practice, speaks to the province, speaks to the continent. The language, the tone of it is important. You cannot teach indigenous dance using 5, 6, 7, 8 for starters. You cannot teach indigenous dance whereby the learners are not wearing the codes or the dresses that are supposed to be reflecting on the indigenous that they're about to explore in a class, mind you. It is important. It is really important or fundamental that the students or the learners need to understand the importance of a lapa. A lapa is what you call a sarong. all right, that has a lot of African colors in it. Because in African dance, we respect the body. This body of a girl is different from the body of a boy. We need to find a way of removing our children from the issue of wearing tights inside the class. They need to wear a tight under, which is a lapa that is wrapped around. Why is the lapa wrapped around? The lapa signifies the importance of a girl, the importance of femininity, which brings a respect between a boy and a girl. The boy will respect the girl will respect the boy. It starts from there. In Africa, mostly women and the girls, when they dance wearing lapas, particularly in Western Central. I have brought that at UCT myself when I started. All my students, they wear lapas. You do not have to ask, where is an African dance class? You see with the dress code of the class, that's African dance. You see with the drumming, that's African dance. We shouldn't actually there shouldn't be a scarcity when it comes to how African dance should look. It's around us. People should use such facility. I know sometimes I'm coming probably from a place of privilege because yes, I've traveled quite a lot and I'm bringing all this information into my teaching pedagogies as well as myself. So African dance, indigenous dance in southern part of Africa, it needs to be treated just like mathematics. It needs to be treated just like science. It needs to be treated just like geography, just like history. Dance in South Africa or in Africa and around the globe is fundamental. It helps particularly children who can't actually understand this culture, which is an old culture of sitting down and just sift everything in as a child. Other children understands information by physically being active. So if you use dance to stimulate such kind of act, there are a lot of children who understand geography because of movement. Because in dance classes, particularly indigenous, we talk about mountains. We talk about steep mountains, we talk about butte, that's geography. And the child will take that information and understand when they go to geography as well. We talk about in the understanding of the body, the muscle itself, the information that the children instill. So why isn't such being respected by other educators, and so to speak? And when you talk about African dance, you need to understand that you're talking about the second largest continent that practices cultures and traditions. It wasn't a mistake that indigenous dance, traditional dances, African contemporary, to be in institutions. But one needs to interrogate the pedagogies that are applied in order to teach these young souls in front of us. So yes, African dance and indigenous dance is a catalyst to educate children. It is a catalyst to empower. It is a catalyst to activate the brain of a child. One of the other fundamental things that indigenous dance offers is this issue of cognitive. We explore a lot of cognitive ways, meaning that we activate the child to think while in the class. The child drives the thinking part while the teacher is sitting on the driving seat, navigating the thinking traits. Those are the tools that are invested in indigenous. And I think somehow the education sector needs to offer the teachers some kind of a pocket as well. A pocket that says you can go out of what is expected of you as a teacher in terms of the teaching pedagogies that teachers are they're actually being imposed to. All right. So the teachers need to go out in such a way, bring information that has a lot of relevance. I think our children in this modern 21st century, they need people that look like them in terms of like the practice itself. It is really sad that our education system really embrace and respect Euro-American pedagogies instead of looking right where we are. Because the fear is that we are creating a lot of replicas that is overseas. Our children are leaving our countries, and because they respect Harvard, they respect Yale, and they respect Cambridge. They don't respect our own institutions that are sitting right here. Why? Because the education that has been stored in front of them is more European oriented. meaning that the Afrocentricity needs to come up. The issue of decolonization needs to come up. The students who took and embarked into this issue of Cecil John Rhodes must fall, fees must fall. It didn't just happen by accident. Students are thinking because we are creating thinking bodies, thinking students. And that is the fundamental thing that is actually bestowed in our children of today. So we need to make sure that we bring a platform of our children that they understand that we matter, we're important. Our cultures and traditions, they didn't become a mistake by being in the schools of or in the system of our societies. But it's just that the system that is there to help them to understand the continent and its people and the social behavior of its people. I think the system that is in place is the one that now is turning around, saying that dance probably is not important. Dance can be replaced by mathematics, or the focus can be on maths, and let's forget about the dancing itself, or let dance be compromised because of, I stand to be corrected here, as I've said, maybe I'm coming from a place of privilege, and I mean well by saying this. I think most of the people that are leaders in these sectors, there's a huge ignorance. Ignorance that is actually accompanied by not knowing. People don't know the power that is invested in dance or arts and craft. Only the people that are involved in it are familiar with what exactly is taking place. We are in the game of humanity. We're in the game of using our art form to educate. We are in the game of empowerment and building societies. And dance offers that. Dance offers that quite a lot. Probably I am one of the people that I can actually attest to it, because I'm coming from the streets of Nyanga East Township, right here in Cape Town. I found it myself, dance rescued me from harshness. If you Google and find out Nyanga East Township, it is one of the murder capitalists and crime, even now in the 21st century. There are a lot of dancers that are coming from there who became students in schools like Chris Hani, who is a feeder right here to University of Cape Town, who are now championing the teaching skills and who sees the importance of Indigenous. But the leaders that they are signed under, I think somehow they do not understand this interesting cobweb, this complementation of subjectivity, meaning mathematics and dance, history and dance, science and dance. Where does dance fit in? Dance is inclusive in all of that. It shouldn't be treated as the other. It shouldn't be stationed right over there, because it is really a source of power. And on top of that, one must understand that the more than 21st century students or learners, they need dance more than ever. You know why? Particularly African dance, Indigenous dance, and African contemporary, because it is a source of healing. If you really tap into or navigate into our children today, a healing is needed. And within my experience, the way now I've used African dance storytelling, whereby I expose learners and my students, tertiary from primary and all, the teachers that I work with seeking information, that let the students, let the learners write their own stories and then navigate them by cognitively, let them run through and dance their stories, which means a new means, new ways of thinking, new ways of exploring and exposing movement, that you get to find out actually the stories that children write, that our country is in tatters, our society needs help, our families need help. So I am leaning more on this side, saying that dance is a catalyst to wellness. African dance is a catalyst to wellness. Indigenous dance is a catalyst to wellness. Let our students know that they can use dance as a catalyst. Instead of saying, let them embody all the nuances, the ills that they're exposed into, either be family dynamics, either be societal matters. So African dance, Indigenous dance, I am more canvassing for that particular pocket, or those particular pockets, or those particular heads that is there. So I really actually urge to say that the people that are leaders, particularly in education system, they need to reevaluate such nuances, such academic nuances that are attached to the importance or significance of African dance and Indigenous acts, because this is the reality that it offers. America 5 years ago started to involve or include in the curriculum the indigenousness, and the Red Indians have been the leaders in that department. And it has revealed and exposed America in the sense that there are a lot of socio-political contexts that have been suppressed by even other children. And through that pocket, African Americans as well were activated on the other pocket. So I must just say, globally, we are not alone, but globally, somewhere, somehow, we shouldn't be the same. Africa has its own ethos. Africa has its own way of articulating and talking and writing, dancing about its own self. Hence, we need to think first of globalization before globalization. Globalization in the sense that everything starts at home before it goes outside, not the other way around. And the beautiful thing about globalization in arts and craft is the fact that it is still globally received. That's quite beautiful about it. The shyness part or the painful part is to see our children respecting Beyonce more than the Miriam Makebas. May her soul rest in peace. And that is something that we shouldn't be proud of. Yeah, I understand the fact that it's very beautiful to understand the role that Mozart and Beethoven played in music. However, we need to understand the importance of Ladysmith Black Mambazo, Johnny Clegg, Brenda Fassie, in comparison to that. How we wave the two, how we put and blend that kind of an information, how we actually understand the importance of ukukula, the importance of choirs in relation to the importance of hip hop as well. So the importance of isiZulu indlamu, the importance of ukutyityimba amaXhosa, ukuteya, ukucula. Same, it needs to be seen as when you are teaching your children the Alvin Ailey repertoires, when you teach your children all the Euro-American context in dance. You need to bring everything right in here. But again, as I've said at the beginning, the teachers have a huge role to play in coming up with pedagogies that suits better indigenous teaching mechanism in schools. That's the one, because I think CAPS is not justifying it quite at all. The objective of CAPS might work, but the way it navigates what needs to happen in class concerning indigenous, there's a loophole in that. In my opinion, I always call CAPS the legacy of apartheid. I'm sorry to say that, but I think this is a platform for education or educative matters, so we're able to converse about such situations. So because I do feel that in high school and primaries, indigenousness is being taught, but I think that it is taught with a vernac that is not properly suitable for indigenous understanding. It is too far-fetched. All right. So such thing they need to be exposed. We cannot expect in the Eastern Cape. I'm from Ekwebekwebe, which is close to Xofimvaba, in between Xofimvaba and Engcobo. Imagine if I have to go and teach umxhenso, ukutyityimba, umteyo, right there in the school, right there, and then I'm using English and I'm using CAPS to define that there's something wrong in there. So a new ways of thinking needs to really come up. And on top of the teachers need to be challenged as well. As I've said at the beginning, this issue of teacher-centered and only give the students. You need to find a way in indigenous teaching codes that it's much more student and teacher-centered kind of a pedagogy when you deal with indigenousness, because this energy and this feel, it creates an amazing harmony of information. The students find the need for the teacher find the importance of the bodies in front of them as well. And then such synergy creates an amazing information as well. And somehow it challenges your CAPS that is in front of you. So a new ways and means needs to be approached as well. So that is actually my thought in this situation. Odile, I'm not sure if I think I've overstepped into questions and answers now.
No, yeah. So we have 5 minutes to have a little bit of a Q&A. I see that we have a question from Andriette Roux. She says, "Can you please expand more on how the language of Africa, of the African influence? Let me start again. How the language of the African influences the style of the particular dance?"
Okay, beautiful. I'll make an example of myself. In my classes, we don't count 5, 6, 7, 8. We have adopted Kiswahili. The Swahili is one of the popular languages in Africa. All right, we've claimed that back. The language as in what we call in Western demeanor in classes, they've got first position, second position, third, fourth, wide, the braba, and on. We've got duple, which is a natural bend position. We've got kanilyoji, which is an outside leg. We've got all these mechanisms, and we've got the Zulu stance positions. We've borrowed language in the southern part of Africa, the way people dancing. All right, if we talk about the upper torso and we talk about isolation, we say, for an example, let's try and go to maybe to Brazzaville, which is central part of Africa, and then we borrow a little bit the isolation movement. And my students know, they reference that because central part of Africa is common when it comes to isolation of the hips, isolation of the torso. That's the language that I'm talking about. The referencing, and then if you know those dances, for an example, there's a lot of dances in West Africa that are common, which is kuku, you've got manjani, so if you know the dynamics, and you've got the Igbo arms. So when I actually ask my learners to open up the arms this wide and say, let's go to the Igbo arms, drop your shoulders, they know what I'm talking about. All right. If I say your legs are not in parallel, your duple is sitting in the wrong position, that's a language that I'm talking about. Vincent Mansoue, who actually now stays in France, but originally from Johannesburg, trained in moving into dance, is adopted Isitswana now into his teaching pedagogies, whereby he talks a lot about Goba, which is Goba, bending of the knees, which is in my side. I use Alphonse Diero's method, which is called duple, all right, which is the double, the more fundamental of natural bend position, moving the body forward with the arms relaxed in front of you. They've got endless vocabulary in his books. So that's what I'm talking about. And I'm saying the language of teaching indigenousness and in dance. Yes.
Okay, that's really lovely, Maxwell. And the thing that you are driving at is the fact that we need to be approaching the teaching of Indigenous African dance from an Afrocentric perspective. So my question to you, for the teachers watching today, is where do we start? Where can we access resources? How do we get exposed to the proper pedagogies in order to be doing this properly?
Okay, this is a very big and a beautiful question. The government have to endorse, has to buy into the significance of this subject, of the way that it needs to be articulated or it needs to be taught. They need to arrange people in power. As I've said, I'm coming from a place of privilege. Even myself, I didn't come up to be the way I am now. I've just been helped by traveling and rubbing shoulders with some people who look like me in other parts of Africa who are doing exactly what I do. And then to come up with this, because we wanted this Afrocentric paradigm to teach African dance. It needs to speak to us, with us, by us, through us. And then our government need to endorse this. Yes, it's not going to happen just by osmosis. It's going to take time, but there need to be a start of for an example. I'll make an example. Fourth year students here at UCT, I was so happy now in this second semester, they're about to submit their essays. A lot of them tap into my office. They had problems of caps. And I was very excited about the fact that students are problematizing caps. I was like, this is the generation then that I'm talking about. The generation that says that there's something wrong with caps. When you teach indigenous dance, it's too far-fetched. So no, it starts from there. It starts from the fact that the brand new students, the students of today, moving forwards, they are the students that need to carry that banner. The teachers that are already in the field, the government and the education system needs to see to it that they find some form of workshops. I know teachers are going to kill me in this regard because I know I've spoken with some of the teachers. They always say, Maxwell, we love our weekends. We love our family days. We can't go into these workshops. They're too much. But I'm saying, hey, you lose some, you gain some. Even myself, I love my family and all. Hey, guess what? I travel in order to know what I know today. And I learn, I read. So I sacrifice a lot to know this. So people have to sacrifice. Our government have to sacrifice and see the importance of actually molding teachers to understand the importance of teaching African dance in an African paradigm, in an Afrocentric tone. Yes.
Wow, Maxwell. Okay, so I think it's clear that we are we're in a space that needs attention from the higher ups, and the only way that this attention is going to be paid to this subject matter is if we start shedding a light on it ourselves. So we've come to the end of our time. Maxwell, thank you for this really enlightening conversation, and I hope that today it has sparked something within the teachers today that gets this topic to the forefront of where it needs to be, so that we can be more so that we can have the tools to do real justice to the teaching of Indigenous African arts, African dance. Thank you so much for your time today, Maxwell, and thank you to everyone who's joined us for this session. We're going to have a 10-minute break. Please stay until the end. There's going to be big prize giving at the end of the day. We look forward to a wonderful keynote address by Dr. Wendy Taylor. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Maxwell.
Thank you so much.